Hello everyone.
The Independence Day of India, which is celebrated religiously throughout the country on 15th of August every year, holds a tremendous ground in the list of national days. Since it reminds every Indian about the dawn of a new beginning, the beginning of an era of deliverance from the clutches of British colonialism of more than 200 years. It was on 15th of August 1947 that India was declared independent from British colonialism, and the reins of control were handed over to the leaders of the country. India's gaining of independence was a tryst with destiny, as the struggle for freedom was a long, tiresome one, witnessing the sacrifices of many freedom fighters who laid down their lives on the line. India was known to the world as the Golden Bird. Pride, prosperity, integrity, loyalty, and dharma were the solid pillars of our nation. The nation was operated by a monarch, a king, a rule, and this nation is embodied as a pioneer for all other world nations. The two poles, education and wealth of the nation, were excelled. India sets an example to the world in terms of governance and war ethics. The land of India was ruled by the kings whose praise reached the skies and whose arrogance reached the ocean's depth. The land of India was ruled by many prideful kings who built architectural marvels. This led to invaders invading India. The Persians, followed by the Iranians and the Parsis, immigrated to the nation. Then came the Mughals, and they too settled down permanently in India. Genghis Khan, the Mongolian, invaded and looted India many times. Alexander the Great too came to conquer India but went back after a battle with the King Porus. Hind Sang from China came in pursuit of knowledge and to visit the ancient Indian universities of Nalanda and Takshashila. Columbus wanted to come to India but instead landed on the shores of America. Vasco da Gama from Portugal came to trade his country's goods in return for Indian spices. The French came and established their colonies in India. In the year of 1612, the British, seeing the resources of the Indian nation, and they formed the British East India Company. They found out that India was not united and has its religious, caste, language divisions, which they used it to their advantage to divide and rule. The British followed divide and rule policy, and they utilized it to create enmity among Indians for creating a war between Indians. Their first war was against Bengal, which they won. In this way, they conquered the whole of India. Indians ended up being British slaves. After the Battle of Plassey in 1757, the British achieved a political power in India, and their paramountcy was established during the tenure of Lord Dalhousie, who became the Governor General in 1848. He annexed Punjab, Peshawar and the Pathan tribes in the northwest of India. And by 1856, the British conquest and its authority were firmly established. And while the British power gained its heights during the middle of the 19th century, the discontent of the local rulers, the peasantry, the intellectuals, common masses, as also of the soldiers who became unemployed due to the disbanding of the armies of various states that were annexed by the British, became widespread. This soon broke out into a revolt which assumed the dimensions of the 1857 mutiny. In 1857, after the Sepoy Mutiny, British ruled India directly. India was considered the jewel in the crown of the British Empire. Queen Victoria had been made the Empress of India, and the British had a major military presence in India. India's resources such as rice, cotton, gold, and spices were owned by the British through this. Indians were left to starve by their heavy taxes and British Act. Anybody who went against the British was considered as a traitor and hanged. The British gave their support to the loyal princes, zamindars, and local chiefs, but neglected the educated people and the common masses. In the year of 1885, educated middle-class nationals have founded the Indian National Congress, called INC. This led to the rebellions. There were two types of rebellion, violent and non-violent. In response to this development, the Morley Minto reforms were introduced in the year 1909. Morley was the Secretary of State for India and Lord Minto was the Viceroy of India. Their reforms led to each province in India having its own governor, and Indian nationals were allowed to sit on the councils which advised these governors. Jallianwala Bagh massacre of April 13, 1919 was one of the most inhuman acts of the British rulers in India. The people of Punjab gathered on the auspicious day of Baisakhi at Jallianwala Bagh, adjacent to Golden Temple, Amritsar, to lodge their protest peacefully against persecution by the British Indian government. General Dyer appeared suddenly with his armed police force and fired indiscriminately at innocent empty-handed people, leaving hundreds of people dead, including women and children. As a result of Amritsar, many Indians rushed to join INC, and it very quickly became the party of the masses. The Non-Cooperation Movement in 1920. Non-Cooperation Movement was a mass movement which was launched by Gandhi in 1920. It was a peaceful and a non-violent protest against the British government in India. People had to resign from their government jobs. People were asked to withdraw their children from government-controlled or aided schools and colleges. Civil Disobedience Movement 1929. Civil disobedience is the active, professed refusal of a citizen to obey certain laws, demands, orders, or commands of a government. By some definitions, civil disobedience has to be non-violent to be called civil. Hence, civil disobedience is sometimes equated with peaceful protest or non-violent resistance. In 1919, the Government of India Act was introduced. Gandhi persuaded many of his followers to use non-violent protest. They had sit-down strikes, they refused to work, they refused to pay their taxes, etc. If the British reacted in a heavy-handed manner, it only made the British look worse. Part of the 1919 Government of India Act stated that a commission would be established after 10 years to assess whether India should have more self-rule. This first met in 1928, the Simon Commission. This commission reported in 1930. There were no Indians on the commission. It proposed self-government for the provinces but nothing else. This was unacceptable for the INC, which wanted dominion status granted immediately. During the time of Simon Commission reported, Gandhi started his second civil disobedience campaign. This included Gandhi deliberately breaking the law. The law in India stated that only the government could manufacture salt. After a 250 miles march to the sea, Gandhi started to produce his own salt. This produced a violent clash with the British authorities and Gandhi was arrested. Quit India Movement 1942. The Quit India Movement was a movement started by Mahatma Gandhi on 8 August 1942 during the World War II, asking for an end to British rule in India. The movement was started in a speech in Bombay where Mahatma Gandhi asked Indians to do or die. The British refused to grant independence until the war ended. Early in 1947, Attlee announced that Britain would leave India no later than June 1948. Lord Mountbatten became the viceroy and convinced that any delay would increase the violence, and he pushed forward the date for Britain leaving India to August 1947. In August 1947, the Indian Independence Act was signed.
Although Independence Day has been actively celebrated by Indians around the world, here are some interesting facts that you may or may not be aware of. The land of Hindus, Hindustan, was a competitive suggestion for the newly formed independent India. But the Indian leaders chose a more secular name, India, after the river Indus. Of course, not only Hindus live in India. We all firmly believe that India gained independence on 15th of August 1947. But did you know that this day was chosen to be celebrated as the Independence Day? Most of us are unaware of this fact that it was on 1929 Lahore session of Indian National Congress the Purna Swaraj Declaration or the Declaration of Complete Independence of India was implemented. And here the 15th of August was declared as the Independence Day. History is indeed sometimes to be questioned, isn't it? Once India gained independence, almost 550 princely states joined hands to build the new country. How amazing is that? A final union of all the kings and queens as one against a foreign power. Sounds like a classic ending of a thriller war movie, right? Independent India's parliament received its first flag from the famous Gandhian Hansa Jivraj Mehta. She, along with 15 other women, represented Free India's parliament. Most of us believe that Hindi was declared as national language of independent India, but it is not so. A country as diverse as India with almost 22 languages taking up one particular language as the national language would be quite unfair. Thus, it's high time we unlearn that according to the Article 343, Hindi is an official language as of India but not the national language. In 1947, the Indian rupee had a high value. In fact, it was as equal to the US dollar. Now, $1 would fetch us approximately 74.65 Indian rupee. Did you know that flying an Indian flag made of any other material other than khadi is punishable by law along with 3 years of imprisonment and a fine? Well, it is. Good that now you know what you would be charged with if you get caught with one of those plastic flags next time. India is one of the most peaceful countries around the globe, although this is questionable considering the customary riots and disagreements. We in fact hasn't invaded any country in the last 1 lakh years of history. And finally, did you know that our country shares the date of independence with some other countries as well? This is again true. Bahrain, Korea, and Liechtenstein also celebrates their Independence Day on 15th of August. 15th of August looks quite popular among its circle. Huh? I wish that a country progresses and succeeds on each and every day struggle with the pandemic. And I also wish that with each passing day, we make our nation a more developed nation. And I wish all of you an Independence Day filled full of hope from the Decibel 707 team.